Hey guys, we are going to continue with the need for functional exercise prescription among the clinical therapist. This is the continuation process. What we saw in the last class was what was the problem of convention, then why do physiotherapists prescribe exercise and what are the main goals there to protect the joint and to infuse normal force in these joints, and why exercise prescription is so vital when you are prescribing exercise to patients. So that prescription aspect that we have seen. Now we will go into some of the important things, basic things which a physiotherapist have to know about human body is how learning takes place and how learning recall takes place. So that we have seen in the first presentation of this series, where we saw about the discrete memory, and then we saw about the day-to-day activities, how they are stored as memory, and we also saw about the skill memory. One important thing I wanted to tell you is you all might have come across alphabets in your school life. You might have also come across the 1, 2, 3 numericals in your school life. There is similar sort of learning with these two things. Your teacher might have given you the numbers and the alphabets and all those things you might have learned in a similar way. Am I right or not? So the recall also should happen in a similar way. That is what we assume, but it doesn't happen so. For example, if I ask you, what is the, if I ask you to memorize A to Z, you can easily say A to Z. Very easily you will remember that A to Z, these all alphabets you will remember. But if I suddenly ask what comes before R, you will say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q. Sorry, it comes Q. So this is how you will recall the alphabet. If I ask what word comes after S, you again start from A, B, C, D, Q, N, M, O, P, S, R. Yeah, R comes after S. This is how I also do, you also do, and universally people do. But when it comes to numbers, if I ask you what comes before 1566, you can say it is 1565. Without matter of time, you can say the numbers are huge, but alphabets are less. But still, recall happens very easily with numbers in between also. How this happens, why this happens, if you see, we have been using the numbers as numbers in our life. When we are counting, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But alphabets, we don't use it as alphabets. We use it as words. We use it as sentence. So all these years, we have not memorized the alphabets in that way. We have memorized it as words and sentences. So we don't remember what comes before and what comes after that swiftly compared to that of numbers. So this is how your muscles also. So when you are doing a sit to stand activity, you are activating most of the lower limb muscles in an order, in a sequence, with sufficient muscle contraction in certain muscles and less relaxation in certain muscles. This is an orderly sequence that is happening. Okay, so you don't use an individual muscle in your day-to-day life. So like how you are using the alphabets. So your brain remembers only the words and sentences. Likewise, your brain remembers only the task and the functions. You have been doing functional positions in various atmosphere, in various tasks, how your muscles have recruited. That is what your body, your brain will remember, not the individual muscle activity. So when you are retraining certain thing, you are trying to recall certain thing, a motor pattern, you have to recall in the way it was remembered rather than introducing a new pattern of activity. So that is why I tell you that whenever a patient comes with difficulty in lifting the upper limb up, what is a functional problem? He won't be able to take objects from the upper rack. If there is a limitation in the internal rotation or the external rotation, he may not be able to wear his dress. So this is the limitation. This is a pattern of movement. Okay, you should remember that. So when that happens, the motor program is more important rather than the muscle activity itself. So retraining the muscle activity may not bring about improvement in the function. That is what I'm trying to say here. So a classical example for this I would like to quote is During gait, similar to staircase climbing and descending activities, forward lunges and single leg hops, the majority of the contact force, CF is contact force, passes through the medial condyle. This is a very important information you should know. Which are the structures that are more stressed in certain functional activities. So here, if you see the functional activity like gait, staircase climbing and descending, forward lunges, single limb hops, all these areas are stressing more of the medial condyle. And the contrary, if you see, the contact force is more on the lateral condyle when people perform activities like standing up, sitting down, squat, side lunges. So these areas will strain more of the lateral condyle than the medial condyle. So these informations are very important for a physiotherapist when he is prescribing exercise, simply because when he is prescribing any functional activities, he should know which structures he is stressing more, and which structure he is relieving the load from. Okay, this contact force is very important. Different loading of specific component could be achieved by careful exercise prescription. As I told you in the previous slide, that you have to keep a little amount of regular forces that are that a joint is used to subject it when it is doing some activity. The same amount of force you should subject the joint to when you're prescribing exercise, or at least you should utilize that joint when you're giving exercise. Avoiding activity of the joint or protecting the joint is not going to help you. At the same time, prescribing single joint exercise is a single muscle exercise is also not going to help you when these muscles come together as a group of muscle. Again, I'll tell you these 4 diagrams here. It shows, if you see this one, A, B, C, D. So there are 4 figures here. The first figure shows, the first one is the medial condyle, medial loading, the contact force that happens in the medial condyle. The next one is the lateral condyle, and the last one is the petrofemoral joint. So how is the contact force? If the contact force is less in a particular joint, that means the joint is less loaded. It is that particular part, that is the medial condyle, is less subjected to stress. You can see these 4 diagrams are corresponding to 4 different physical activity, a functional activity. First one, if you see, this is the standing up. When you do a stand-up activity from a chair, a level grounded chair, you see the medial condyle is less loaded compared to the lateral condyle and the patellofemoral joint. The next one is the sitting down activity. From a standing position, if you're going to sit down on a chair, again, the medial condyle is not stressed much, and the lateral condyle and the patellofemoral condyles are more, patellofemoral joints are more stressed. The third one, if you see, in a squatting position, in this squatting, if you see, again, the medial condyle is slightly more subjected to contact force compared to the lateral and medial, but it is compared to the lateral condyle and the patellofemoral joint, it is less compared to that. But if you see the last activity here, the medial condyle is more stressed than the lateral and the patellofemoral condyle. What activity this might be? This is nothing but your normal gait. So when you are walking, you're subjecting your medial condyle to maximum forces, whereas when you're doing the other activities like squatting, sit to stand, you are relieving the medial condyle as such. So when a patient is coming to you with pain when the patient is walking, it doesn't mean that you should not give them the standing up, sitting down or squatting exercises. You may think that walking itself is becoming very painful for the patient. How can I prescribe sit to stand or squatting exercise? But that is not true. If you understand which part of the joint is more loaded in a particular position, in a particular functional activity, you have the freedom of prescribing exercise for the patient. So this is the classical difference between a physiotherapist prescribing exercise to a patient and a novice or a gym trainer prescribing exercise to a patient, or an orthopedician contraindicating certain activity to the patient. So utilize your anatomical knowledge more when it comes to prescribing exercise and the physiological knowledge compared to the other so far the advanced treatment as such. So functional exercise is going to be the mantra for the future when you're prescribing exercise for you to be very successful. And when you ask me to conclude this presentation, what I should need as a young budding physiotherapist, what are the things I should read to prescribe exercise for patients? The first important thing is you should know about the motor control and the motor control theories. What do the motor control theories, which is in current existence, states about movement, how movement happens. And second thing you have to know is about the learning process of any activity. And remember, there is nothing called as a muscle memory. It is all about the brain which memorizes the activity. And you should know that a movement takes place in three very important contexts: in context of the individual, in context of the task, and in the context of the environment. You can also say the motivation and the mindset of the patient is also very important. And if you know these things, then it is very easy for you to prescribe exercise. Third, you have to know how to assess a patient. So when you're assessing a patient, you should go in depth about the functional activity. What was the functional activity he was doing before, what he's doing now, in what way it is limited, what are the particular activities he's not able to do, how he has modified all these things in this time, how is his irritability to pain when he's doing functional activity. All these things are very, very important. You should put up a open-ended question to the patient and listen more of what the patient says compared to measuring and quantitative quantification of certain things. Yes, you might have studied all these quantifications as a very important thing when you are doing your practical examinations in your undergraduation and post-graduation. But when it comes to clinical therapy, clinical practice, it is the subjective history that is more important than the objective history, because with subjective history, you come to a hypothesis. The hypothesis has to be created by means of a very in-depth subjective history. And very importantly, final, the limitation of different clinical conditions. How is the condition going to progress? How is the patient mindset? All these things are very important. And I would request all my budding therapists to go and read into these aspects of exercise prescription. Thank you so much. Looking forward for more cultivative sessions in the future. Bye. Thank you.